Hi dear users of JDisc Discovery. This is the second part of our small series about the new JDisc Discovery WebUI. Today we want to look into the discovery and scanning process, and I will show you the new UI and the new look and feel, usability and comfort that you get with the function in the new WebUI. Welcome to the JDisc YouTube channel. Well, first of all, I would like to point you to a blog article that was already published in January of this year on the topic of the new scanner features in the new JDisc WebUI. You find that as usual under https://blog.jdisc.com. There you find a little bit more details in written form. Well, before I start you showing in an online demonstration the new features of the scanner, I would like to give you some background on the discovery process, how a discovery scan is performed. Initially, what you have is you need to start a discovery. You can do that either ad hoc for one device, on a device itself, or entering the IP address, or you can create a discovery job. And that discovery job can be scheduled, or you can run it, well, when you want with a menu, right? So that's where it starts. Well, what this does is really, as a next step, it starts an ISP scan. So in the discovery job, you configure which devices, which network, which group of networks or IP addresses you want to discover. So you specify an IP range usually, or you have a single IP if you just scan one device, or you're scanning a Active Directory service. So there are a couple of ways how to start that, but common to all of them is that they start with a certain configuration and they collect IP addresses. Let's suppose you have a range of IP addresses. Of course, there are many IP addresses in between. So it will check whether these are really devices behind them and put those devices, these IP addresses, into the device queue. On this device queue is the actual discovery sitting on top. So the device scan. This device scan will try to resolve the IP address because there might be a host name behind it that can be reached. It will check which protocols this device is supporting and try to get information using these various protocols. It will check accounts that you have configured, either directly on a device, on a group, on a directory, or using the password manager that we introduced in one of the previous videos. So when the discovery can connect and knows that it can collect information, it does that in parallel. So there's a configuration of threads that will in parallel work on this device queue, on the devices, to actually collect the information. So collecting information is the next step. So it really, JDisc Discovery will log in, it will deploy little pieces of software ad hoc kind of to the machine in order to collect information using the various protocols, using scripts and all the other mechanisms. Well, what kind of information it will collect depends on what you configure. You can configure information filters, so you limit what information you collect or how much. You can limit it to certain device classes. Suppose you don't want to collect information about printers or about network devices, right? You can exclude them or include them correspondingly. And of course, during discovery will potentially find additional devices, right? IP addresses, etc. But it will adhere to your IP ranges that you have configured. Only if a new device that is found, such as an accessory or an attached device like an USB, Bluetooth or BLE device, matches your filters, it will of course be discovered as well. So there are a couple of cases where you can really find new IP addresses. Think about a cluster. Well, maybe the initial discovery finds the host systems of the cluster or the vCenter, for example, and there might be virtual machines running on it, or containers, which are computers or virtual computers by themselves. So they will also be put into the device queues correspondingly. Or JDisc Discovery will look at the ARP cache. There might be additional IP addresses. The DNS server might give hints to additional IP addresses. Or a certain machine that's being discovered has a communication connection to some other machine which is not yet in the queue, so these so-called process dependencies that you see in the dependency graph in the existing Fed client UI, that might indicate another IP address that could be discovered. Only if it's in IP range, of course, right? So these things are put into the queue again, and the process will digest them as it comes into processing reach. Of course, when you, for example, discover a single device, that single device might be put in front of the queue, right? So it has more priority, while a bunch of existing IP addresses are being processed. So that's how the discovery process works in general. So what kind of functionality does the scanner support? Well, of course, you can scan a single device, or you can scan using a discovery job, which comprises IP ranges or whole groups of networks or directories. You have a couple of directory settings that you can do. You can look at the runtime statistics of a job while it is running. You can look at the discovery queue. There is a discovery log that documents what the discovery does, and the set of events, so when a discovery started, when something was done, or when it has ended. Of course, the status during the discovery, for example, for the ping, device, network, or directory or cloud discovery, that tells you what the system is doing at the moment. Sync status between discovery servers, and, as I said, the queue status. So that's what you can see. And that's what we will look now in an online session. I showed already in one of the previous windows that I logged in and I have the dark mode on. So here we see the scanning section in the menu, right? That's what I selected. And here we have a window with all our discovery jobs. Let's start with that, right? So here you see we have 3 discovery jobs to discover everything, only Saarbrücken and Stuttgart, which are cities in Germany where we have assets in a company. Well, but before we do that, let's start a single device discovery. We can either go to the reporting section, select one device and start discovery there, or we could simply as well here enter an IP address. So we do that by entering the IP address of the server here, and we press go. And you see here the window pops up, in this case with the discovery details, and we see the discovery running and also the device queue with this single device in here. So you saw already the 2 things that I wanted to show you. And you see here in the discovery status that the system is preparing for the ping status is already finished, which was quick for one device. And now it's preparing to be discovered. So let's look at a job. So we select this job, for example, Saarbrücken, and we look at the details. Well, a small dialog is opened and you see there's some general information. Here we see when the job was running. Job is scheduled daily, so obviously every day it's being running. In the agenda down here we see that this is a normal job that was successfully run, whether it's an interrupted job, so whether there was an error, and the median. Now see, there's one job here that has been running a little bit longer, but the rest was working just fine. Currently the job is stopped, and you see when it was last started and when it was finished the last time. Here in settings, well, in discovery, here we see, well, at the moment you can't edit the discovery jobs. That's only possible in the existing UI, but we can see the information. And here in schedule, we see that it's really a daily running job at 10 o'clock every day. You can define blackout periods. Here there's none defined. Blackout period means the time when the job should not run, because, for example, you have in the middle of the night a backup job running, which makes heavy use of the network, and you don't want to run a discovery at the same time. So here we have this nice calendar at the bottom, and you see here that at 10 o'clock the gray ones have been the jobs that have already been running this week, and the blue ones are the upcoming ones. If you go up here, we can also see in a monthly view that it really was running or it will be run every day in the month without exception. And we can also have a daily view where we see that, okay, at 10 o'clock this job was running. Now we're in the evening somewhere. So this is quite a nice display that shows you the schedules, even especially if you have a bit more complex schedules with blackout periods, etc., where you can see that nicely. What's next? Here in events, we see, especially in this view, when a job has started, what it has done, and when it finished. Now in this job, the last time it was been running, there was no new information updated, and that's just what you see here in these messages. And finally, in the section on logs, you see what the discovery job did. You get the detailed protocol of the discovery job while it was running. So you see here some messages. Because the job didn't find any new information, there's a lot of information here. So for example, if you go to ping or directory, right, you see that some of these sections are pretty empty because there was no new information. But you get the general point, and you can also switch configuration to another job here as well in this dialog. So let's close that. In this status display, you see the number of scanned IP addresses from the device queue, right? You see here 33 from 47 being processed, the average time it takes to discover a certain device, and the number of total devices. So you see it's progressing quickly here, and our activity and device queue should be finished soon. So you see now it's finished, 100% done, and are back to 0, and we see that the job is stopped again. And by the way, the last duration that the job was running, last run, and when it will be run next, which means of course tomorrow at 10, so in a couple of hours, in 3 hours or so, it will be run again. So I hope you found that interesting and you found it usable and a nice experience using the new scanner in the new JDisc WebUI. If you liked it, then please make sure that you leave us an abo, a like, and don't forget to press the bell icon so that you get notified of new videos also in this series. Thank you and see you. Bye bye next time.